Of course. Good morning, everyone. Woo. Welcome to the Tuesday public meeting of the BOCC. We want to start with the flag salute, rising. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen to give us a review and motion on the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. As I usually do, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any questions on the minutes? See none, we call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Passes. We'll go through the agenda today, just so I'm right up front with you. At 10 o'clock, we have a Board of Health meeting scheduled. So we'll do, if we get through business, great. If we don't get through business, we'll recess the regular BOCC and do the Board of Health at 10. Consent agenda today, we have 4 different call for hearings coming up. One, July 18th is a budget amendment scheduled. We do those every so often to adjust the budget to what's being actually reflected. We have on July 18th, Rogers Telecom to use county properties for installation, construction, erection, repair, relocation, removal of their facilities. So we'll have a public hearing on that. On July 11th, we have 2 of them on July 11th, and they deal with campground and recreational facilities. The code was, they were in the process of splitting the code between, they had a Board of Health had a section that they needed to split out of original code. So this is your chance to look at the code and offer some input. And also on July 11th, county code, which will be changed because we're splitting a piece of that out. And so that's your time to chat with them about that. Agreements, contracts, we have a amendment to the professional service contract with Parametrix. They do a hydrologic, man, big words today. They work with studies on Lewis River groundwater. And we're just extending that expiration date to December of 2024. State 911 Coordination Office. I believe maybe you can help with this a little bit. I believe this is just a pass through. Actually, 911 doesn't report to us anymore, but this is excise tax revenue. And I think it just passes through the county and then to 911 in an amount of 52,061. And then a local agency consulting agreement with Otak. They'll be doing the engineering and environmental permitting on Pleasant Hill Road, where that culvert washed out and it's got a temporary bridge right now. And we have FEMA funding for replacement of that. And these folks will start the engineering and the process for that. What we heard yesterday is our goal is to have that done in 2024, but it could extend out to 2025 as projects go. Board correspondence. We had a letter from federal emergency area that just acknowledging we sent a request and extending a date to August 31st of 23 for a report, and they were okay with that. And then a retirement letter to Keith Madison, congratulating him on 30+ years of service to the county. And then vouchers in the amount of $3,752,764.53. Questions on consent agenda?
Just a quick, that FERC is energy. It's the successor to the Atomic Energy Commission.
Okay.
Item number 7, the engineering for the Pleasant Hill Bridge replacement. That's $231,000 just for the engineering.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Well, that was a simple culvert in the past, and all of the state and environmental and all the regulations thrown at us create quite a kerfuffle there. Why is the county is expected to pay this entire bill?
Well, we have, the entire bill was,
About two and a half million.
yeah, about 2.5 million.
For the
We're,
total bridge.
The whole thing.
yeah, from start to finish, we're responsible for 330, a percentage. So,
Well, it gets the feedback going. A simple culvert could have been a replacement challenge or opportunity in there, but we're saddled with a whole bunch of criteria that's above and beyond our and your purview. So we need to be pushing back.
Just a second. I agree with you, but it should probably not just be a simple culvert replacement. Because once something is washed out, you learn something. You've got to do a better job the next time through, if you can. And I don't know what the specific circumstance here, but when there's a good deal of effort to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Correct. And whatever you put in there, it still needs to be maintained and looked at. We wash tree trunks, garbage down there, whether it's a bridge, whether it's a culvert. It doesn't exist forever without attention. And that
Right.
gets back to our maintenance and attention to these facilities too.
Public Works does a pretty good job, to my understanding, of keeping all the culverts clean. This has been going on a while. I don't recall specifically on this, but I don't think it's just a culvert now. It's really a bridge and with
Oh, yeah, it's
a
a whole
wider
bunch.
passage underneath. And so that's be less prone. The big argument is, why is it so expensive and are we doing anything upstream?
Well, it's a bridge. It takes special structural design and a whole lot of piling and a bunch of other stuff for permanence rather than what the other options are.
Right.
yeah. Thank you. Any other comments on consent agenda? And I would ask the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda submitted today.
Last chance for questions, not seeing any. I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Consent agenda passes. Public Works.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sean Roy from Public Works. Today, before you, we have an on-call agreement for electrical work with AET to provide services to the landfill. This is for both repair and any ongoing improvements on the electrical systems at the landfill.
Sean, tell us a little bit about AET. Is it a local company? Is it the only bid or what? kind of
Yes, competition so- was involved? We had 4 bids total on this project. AET was the most responsive and lowest bid on it. It includes both hourly labor, and as well as emergency and overtime work.
And they're from where?
I believe they're local.
I believe that's true. Any other questions? From the public, any questions on this contract? check online.
It's clear.
Okay. I would ask the pleasure of the board on it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award to Advanced Electrical Technologies as has been presented.
Last opportunity. Okay, I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Building and planning.
Good afternoon.
Morning.
Morning. So on your agenda, you have a request to authorize the Director of Building Planning to sign a grant application. So that would give the county the opportunity to partner with a local business and a vendor on a request for some state monies that would contribute to installation of alternative fuel vehicle infrastructure, either hydrogen or electric vehicle charging. In this case, it would be electric vehicle charging. We had a workshop about this last week. I think we answered some questions, and today is the motion item for the board to consider.
Yeah. Now these kind of start, I know you looked at, you became aware that this is available, but it really kind of starts with interest from a business entity, right? So you're out in Cougar and there was an entity that said they'd want to do these, and these are these in groups of 4? Do I remember that right? 4?
Yeah, the idea is that 4 vehicles could charge.
And our role in it is if the business entity wants to have this there, we can apply on their behalf for the grant, right?
Yeah, the grant requires a partnership between a government entity, a private business, and a vendor.
And we learned yesterday that we actually have 2 businesses that have this request. Drew's Grocery is one out Spirit Lake and one out in Cougar. So when we get through the process and if that is awarded to the county, then where does the county's, I mean, we're not responsible for the maintenance and all that. The county's obligation ends. Is that correct?
Well, the period of performance is 5 years. So I think the county, in partnership with the private interest, private business, is obligated to meet the period of performance. So if something happened to the private party, the county's part of that partnership. So there's 5 years where we're in partnership. We're counting on everything
Okay.
going right. The grant, if it's successful, will make sure these chargers are installed. The business will do their thing. They will service customers who come in and get charges. And the county will be the applicant essentially.
Okay.
But there
And-
is that obligation to be on board for 5 years.
Then the benefit to the business is kind of indirect. People stop, charge their car and they shop or do whatever. Then after the 5 years, then does the proceeds from what it earns start going to the business?
Yeah, and that would be likely. Like a pop machine on your property, it eventually pays for itself and you reap the benefits. The partnership agreement isn't drafted yet, so the Board of Commissioners still has opportunity to make sure that there's more than just private benefits. Maybe there's some other indirect or direct benefit that you would like to negotiate with the vendor, maybe some tourism promotion or something to benefit our county and the area of Cougar. But that has yet to be determined.
Yeah. Okay, I can understand we might be partners with them for 5. I just don't want to be partners forever and ever and put the county on the hook forever and ever. type
Yeah,
thing.
I think we do want to see the agreement because
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things occur in agreements, but did you introduce yourself, Adam?
I'm not sure I did. So I'm Adam Trimble. I'm a senior policy outreach planner with building and planning.
Yeah.
And we've got,
Any questions from commissioners on that? Questions from the audience? I can tell you my thoughts on this. I don't have any issues helping out these businesses that want to do this. But this whole concept of the state driving business, this is businesses that are done by mandates and subsidies. It's mandated by the state that we're going to do this, and then they tax you this 44 cents on a gallon of gas, ring a bell, and they'll give it back to you if you do that. So they subsidize this business, and the whole concept of business being run by government is distasteful to me. If there's this isn't like Henry Ford deciding, if I make a cheaper car, everybody's going to buy it and I'm willing to put my capital in. This is government saying, this is what you're going to do. We're going to take money from you to make it happen. And I have real issues with that, and you should have issues with that too. But if it's out there and we can help these businesses in these, I'll work within that system. But you got to know this is not the correct way to do these things. It's not supply and demand. It's the demand. If the demand was high enough, this would already be done because somebody would have invested in it. They knew they could make some money on it and it'd be there. But you're being forced to do it. And we see that more and more and more. And that should, it should at the very least raise the hairs on the back of your neck, if not ruffle your feathers.
Well, going off what you've just said, have you done a study on the actual demand or usage that it would draw? Because I don't really think that the amount that it would cost to put that in versus population, even with tourism, would actually justify the cost of installing it.
I'd like to make a comment on that.
Yeah.
This is I agree with what the chairman said, but we are not in an ideal situation. So we end up having to think on a short term and a long term and try to optimize what we can do without turning the ship even faster down a cliff. I'd remind people that a little wisdom and a little bit of chance needs to be taken sometimes. Like probably Dennis could talk to us for a long time about the the rural electrification, where that was essentially funded by tax dollars in advance, or the interstate highway. And of course, the highway is different because in the Constitution, it says the government handles the posts and the roads. But underlying it's sort of the same principle. Somebody is deciding where things go other than the consumer, and that's a dangerous thing.
So I want to just say, I think this is a big mistake. I have an electric car, had one for a long time, and I can just tell you from experience, those charging stations are expensive. They are prone to needing a lot of maintenance. And for the state, or for us as a county, to be moving into this program of, we're going to put this here, hope somebody comes and uses it, is a big mistake. Electric cars are not going to be the thing. They're gonna fade in 5 years. Nobody's gonna want them. They're popular now because everybody thinks it's the greatest thing. They do have a purpose. I like mine, but I'm not driving up to Cougar with it to charge. It's like this is not a good thing, and I don't think you should do it.
Do you have any, if you can email us some additional information, that would be cool. Because like Adam said, when the agreement comes out, that's when we'll get a chance to really analyze it. One thing that was alarming for me is the county being on the hook. I don't know what that means. For 5 years, we're on the hook. And that's always something you got to look at really closely. But fortunately, you have some time, or we have some time here to feedback. Much appreciated.
I think I heard Silver Lake briefly mentioned and then glossed over. Is that correct? On that electric.
You
stuff?
need to get a little bit closer to the microphone. So
Oh, sorry. I said, I think I heard Silver Lake briefly mentioned and then glossed over with the electric. charger.
Drew's Grocery it made an inquiry and would like to be
Okay,
part of the.
well,
program.
Select Market is getting, I believe it's at least 4 of those right now, and they already had 2
Who does?
in Castle Rock, Select Market in Castle Rock.
Oh, Castle Rock.
And they are right now getting them. I was just there yesterday afternoon and they're working on them.
Oh.
And I don't think that that is something that needs to be slammed all over all of our rural areas. Because it's, it's rural still. Like there's still a lot of properties up there, that are right up against the forest lands and stuff like that. And so I don't think that there's probably going to be enough generated by them to do something like that right now. I mean, I know people are coming in droves, but
Yeah.
I would just like to see some of our, forest lands and stuff preserved and not dedicated to all electric cars. I don't know, maybe I'm nuts,
No,
but I
think
don't
these
think
would
the
just be-
taxpayers should be on the hook for that kind of stuff either.
well, you're already on the hook because you're paying it through your gas
Right,
tax.
right. I'm just saying, I don't think that we should be,
They didn't give you a choice.
constantly on the hook.
Yeah.
That we should have a choice.
Well, I think that just points up the importance of getting that agreement, looking at the details, making sure we're not getting into the AV business, because
Right.
that's not our mandate. So we'll be looking at that pretty carefully.
A quick clarification from Adam. This proposal is for both Cougar and the Tootle area.
I did speak to a business owner in Tootle area. They fully understand that the deadline is quick approaching, but I told them I'd be more than happy to work with them. We've got an application that could easily be adapted to include them. I was hoping to hear from them yesterday whether they would participate or not. But they talked with the vendor last week and they were kind of deciding if they wanted to go in on an application.
So from sort of a pedantic standpoint, we're going to have to approve or pass on an application for Cougar or Cougar and Tootle.
Well, that's your pleasure. What would you prefer? We started out with the Cougar project in mind and built everything up that direction. And then learned about this interest from Silver Lake later. So if you want to proceed with just one, that could be your direction to us or to sign on to those who are interested.
I'd probably prefer just to do the Cougar one, but has nothing to do with it being in my district. It has to do with Cougar is far away and there are lots of tourist attractions, the ape caves and access to interesting areas up there. So, and people do drive electric cars.
So Adam, you mentioned a deadline coming up quickly. When's sort of the drop dead date for a new applicant to join the bandwagon, so to speak?
Yeah, it was probably yesterday. I'm not sure how successful we'd be if they called this morning and we adapted everything. It might still be possible, but we're pretty close to the deadline. So that was the call I was waiting for yesterday. I didn't hear from them.
Okay. Okay, well,
Okay, 3 points, commissioners. Number one, you mentioned a comparison to national highways. Well, that had to do with transportation nationally, Homeland Security and national security. I beg to understand what this program has to do with that overall national infrastructure.
So allow me to explain that then. in society, we have to build, say, a sewage treatment plant well in advance of the people being able to pay for the sewage treatment plant. So we do bonds. That's a decision made by political entities. Same with the highways. We can think of 1,000 reasons why for security and all that we have highways. I think that's irrelevant to the point that I was trying to make, which is you pay for things in advance.
Sure. Okay, secondly, is that the title? I take offense with that, zero emissions vehicle infrastructure. There's no such thing. That's just another euphemism that they're dumping on us. Okay, so that's no zero emissions. Everything has some emissions, including just us. Okay, thirdly, is that maintenance was mentioned. Well, we just caught on the news where one of these stations down in California, someone decided to vandalize them, cut the hoses off, and it was going to take weeks to get the replacement hoses on. So people pulling in, they're running out of electricity and they don't even have a hose to connect up with. Under our present society, we have alternatives. This doesn't create many alternatives. Thirdly, under this, the BlackRock CEO just recently told us all in the national agreements with our government that they're going to tell us what we need to do because they know better.
Oh, goodness gracious. Good morning. I guess my first question is, I agree with, I hate to see government forcing business versus business going the other direction and demand creating the business to make it happen. This looks to me like you've got both electric and hydrogen vehicle fueling infrastructure. Is that correct? So I don't know anybody that has a hydrogen vehicle. Does anybody in this room know anybody that has a hydrogen vehicle?
Yeah, I think that the program deals with hydrogen vehicles. Our specific application is not for hydrogen vehicles.
I understand that. But here, in contrast to your previous comments about building a sewer system ahead of schedule because you know that your growth is going to happen, how much growth do you know is going to happen for electric vehicles, and how much growth do you know is going to happen for hydrogen vehicles? Right now, the upset and the trend for electric vehicles and the problems with getting resources to make batteries is a problem going forward for Elon Musk even in discussing the difficulties with that. And the fact that the government is putting their thumb on the scale here to try and force everybody that direction and shut down gas vehicles. Personally, I think that's a total disruption of the natural evolution of necessity is the mother of invention, and people will come to it as it is naturally advantageous for them to do it, rather than forcing people in that direction. As our poverty level grows instead of shrinks, less and less people can afford the electric vehicles, even with government rebates and mandates to buy them. Okay, I guess I can't understand. Oh, when people plug into these, do they have to put in a card to pay for it? Are they buying it? Or is this just a free service?
It's a pay for service. It's like filling up your gas tank. You pay for it.
Do you know what the rate is for buying electricity at one of these facilities? No, I'm asking, what is the cost of electricity for you to charge your vehicle at one of these? How much do you pay per kilowatt hour that you're buying?
It depends on the company.
Okay, so it's not being set by the PUD, it's being set by the people that own the service? Okay. All right, thank you.
Just, it reminded me, you essentially asked who's got the foresight or the crystal ball to see where the growth is. I remember in California when I-5 did not go south of San Clemente. And then finally it got built through, and I drove on it shortly after it was open, and I looked around, there were 4 lanes going southbound, and I was the only car, and I wondered what brain dead engineer put this thing on the planning board and built it. And then last time I was down in San Diego, close to that same spot, there are now 12 lanes in each direction, and there's still traffic jams. So I never know how to predict anything like that. Just a cute story.
You talk about population growth versus business growth. Completely different ballgame.
Except when you put something out there, like the rural electrification effort, the presumption is, that there is going to be population growth. And I don't know how that works. And we are currently facing spending, I think, what was the announcement, $60 billion for putting broadband into the hinterlands. I don't think we should do that, but I still remember the electrification effort, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm still as blind today as I was back 50 years ago.
Yesterday, Washington is #1 in gas tax, the highest cost of gas in the nation, including light. We finally moved ahead of the light.
If we could, we would take the money that this would come and try and figure out how to undo. I mean, we were trying to undo that. I assume I would.
Yeah, if you send it back.
All right, so just one more way to look at this is if Shell or Exxon wanted to put a gas station up in Cougar, are we gonna make it special provision and fund that? Would that be something that, because this is the same thing. These are private businesses that put these chargers in and charge you for the fuel. And the thing you don't realize is that, our kilowatt hour, for me to charge my car at home doesn't cost me anything. I charged one time just to try it out, and I could drive a 1-ton truck for what it cost me to charge my car. And so, you're favoring private business that, like you say, if there's a profit to be made, then let those businesses take the risk on it. But you're picking winners and losers here, and government's got no business doing that.
I'm just another one that's not in favor of government getting involved in things that private industry ought to do that. And you said it, Commissioner Dahl, that it should be supply and demand driving this and doing all of it. The minute you as a county step in and help with some of that process, people will have their hands out and saying, will you continue to then make this available to me? Because today, maybe there's some demand here and you're going to do this for me, but now I want more. I want more of this, and you did it once, do it again. It's that fallacy that when we have grant money available, although grants are very good and they help us with a lot of things, they many times come with strings attached to those. There may not be direct strings to this, but there's going to be an understanding or an image that we supported that, and we are part of that. Then we become then the entity, I guess, that's there, that people can come back and say, now, I don't really like where those are all at. We need some over here, and we need some over here, county. Please step up and help us. Now, again, at that time, you could say, no, that's a possibility. But is that train on the track coming down now at 90 miles an hour, where we have a chance right now to say, wait,
let's just get out of things the government shouldn't be in and say, no, private industry, if you want to, we're supportive of that, but you go out and show that there is demand for this and a reason to have it done, and then you pay for it. And we'll help you to the extent of permitting and whatever, and maybe even giving them, I don't want to say that. We can help as much as we can without being a part of the process, is just what I'm saying. I think someplace along the line, we've got to start putting on the brakes and saying no, because there's this train that is coming down the tracks. And it's nice to say you could maybe keep some control in the permitting when it actually comes down to how that's all written up. But it's the same old thing, though. Government should not be involved in things that private industry could and should be doing. And at someplace along the line, I would just say we need to start saying no.
Are you going to be on the same topic?
Yes. My question is, what is the actual cost of the grant? What is it going to take for money to fund for electric?
All right, so the funding opportunity is $30 million statewide. So that money will get spent somewhere in Washington State. It's federal pass-through funding.
Yeah.
The Cougar budget took the route of a vendor that provides equipment that doesn't require expensive substations. So sometimes you go to electric vehicle chargers, you'll see a bunch of cabinets there. Those are pretty expensive equipments. And the power has to be super, well, it just has to have available power to supply those. This vendor, their equipment doesn't require the substations, and it can make do with the power that's typically available throughout the county, even in rural areas. So their equipment's a little bit more expensive. The trade-off is you don't have to build the expensive substation. But they did estimate just pure cost of install would be around $500,000.
Okay, and where is it going to be located? Is for what vendor is the partnership with?
Yeah, the private partner would be the Lone Fir Resort and Cafe in Cougar, Washington.
How did this come about? Does the vendor come to you guys, or how is that?
Yeah, I learned about the funding opportunity and researched ways to see if there was a partnership that could come together, including without involvement of the county. The Cowlitz PUD, Pacific Core, Port of Woodland, they all had different reasons for not wanting to be the applicant, so to speak. In this case, I reached out to some businesses in Cougar. There aren't a ton. One of them called me back and had already done the legwork to research installation of electric vehicle chargers, but found several roadblocks along the way to that. And so this funding opportunity seemed like a good fit. And the partnership came together when the vendor, FreeWire, was very responsive and has a really great team that is working hard in the partnership with us to make this application.
So the county would be responsible for 5 years of maintenance on that?
No, the county would be a partner to the project for 5 years. The private business is going to take on the responsibility for the maintenance of the chargers, and the vendor provides a warranty that meets the grant terms. So the actual vendor is going to be the servicer of the equipment for the grant term. And so that way it's not just the local business person trying to fix this sophisticated equipment. It will be FreeWire. And FreeWire is present in the county currently. They have at least 2 locations. So they're here. They're already operating this equipment on the I-5 corridor. There's one in Kelso just down the road from us if you want to check it out.
And the total cost was what, 30 million?
The grant opportunity is $30 million. It was actually increased. They had advertised it in the $3 to $6 million range, and then learned of this large increase in funding being available. And that's when it appeared that it would be a good opportunity for Cowlitz County to try to benefit from this opportunity.
I don't know if that's a good idea, fellas. Seems like a lot of money for a small amount of provision.
A question for you, Adam. Where are you? How much have we spent on this effort so far, and where are you in that effort? How much more do we have to spend? Just to get the grant application out.
Well, the vendor has done a lot of the legwork and put together the phone calls.
Oh,
and
just
meetings.
answer my question, please.
It's just time. So
Okay.
at least 10 hours, probably 15.
Okay, and are there more hours to come?
The application probably needs 2 more hours, and there will be I don't know if there's going to be a chance to present or do some kind of response with WashDOT in July. So there could be more hours if we're awarded, for sure.
Is the $30 million number, is that nationwide, countywide, statewide? Is that just for Cowlitz County?
That's the state of Washington Department of Transportation for the state of Washington.
It's available in the state, okay. And you said that the 5-year obligation for the county, I wonder why the 5 years if the other party to this agreement is responsible for maintenance and et cetera, et cetera. What is the county's obligation for that 5 years? Why 5 years?
Yeah, I would just be kind of guessing at the WashDOT design. I think with a government sponsor, government applicant, they have that assurance that the funding, the public funding that's going to invest in this project goes through a responsible government entity, and that period of performance is met.
Okay, so there's some level of maintenance or upkeep or something that the county's responsible to make sure that it meets that level, even though they're not the persons doing it.
Right, that the chargers remain available to the public and remain open and operable.
Okay,
It's probably a little difficult to answer that because we haven't seen the contract. You know, this is just, this particular part is, hey, yeah, we're interested in if we get a grant. If you get the grant, then you got to agree on a contract. So there's probably some hazy stuff in there.
is there any obligation to pay this money back from the county or from the vendors who take advantage of this? It's just a grant. It's a one-way thing. They get the money and the investment into it, and it's over from the county's perspective.
You know, those kinds of questions are things that can only be answered after we see the agreement, and you'll get plenty of time to challenge that. Right now, the question on the table is, do we proceed with the grant? And I think philosophically, the audience has said no. And that's the question we have to decide still.
And how many people do you have that are wanting to participate in this right now?
Just the one business right now.
Just the one?
Yeah.
Well, personally, I hope we don't do it.
Sorry. When you mentioned resort, I looked that up and it's an RV park and resort campground kind of a thing, and it looks fairly rundown. So how much upgrading is going to need to be done to the whole electrical system, given that I live in one with a bad electrical system, before any of this happens, this magic electric charging station?
The Cowlitz PUD said that the power is available and a drop could be made pretty easily from existing pole. So there won't be any changes beyond that connection.
Okay, and how many spaces and cabins and et cetera? What's the acreage of that place?
The business has an existing parking lot. It'll be up to them whether they need to expand it or not, but they have sufficient spaces already.
I doubt they have
Park
sufficient
these,
electricity.
In the interest of time,
Mhm.
I hope you'll come back
Okay.
if we approve this, you'll come back when we have the agreement
Okay.
and you'll say, no, 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 yes, no.
Well, I really hope
But at
that
this
you
point,
don't
we
approve
can't
it.
answer half
Okay.
your questions.
All right.
So
I
please-
did, that just came up as I was listening. Thank you.
I think we have to remember that what we have before us is simply a request to go forward with apply. We may not get the grant. But if we get the grant, you can bet we're going to be analyzing. We don't want to be on the hook for expenses that aren't in our best interest. So.
I would like to make a comment on mindset. All of us that get up and speak, we all, when we kind of trip over things, we go or the or whatever. I noticed over on this side over here that particular phrase in his mind is funding opportunity, which he keeps talking over and over and over about. I think that mindset is kind of outdated, and I would suggest that we can consider opportunity traps. These are all traps, and we got to be careful not to get caught.
Any other? Pleasure of the board?
I think, has a motion been made? No,
No.
your turn, Dennis.
It's my turn. Well. I appreciate those comments, and I'm pretty skeptical about our role on getting involved in something like this. I don't mind going the next step and seeing if the money's even there. It's not like the state of Washington has been bestowing us on all kinds of favors. So the business, as has been pointed out on comment, is a seasonal business. It's not year round. So that's not going to rank very high on any evaluation, but we don't know. On the other hand, it's very remote. They're on a state highway. They are limited. They need all the help they can get to stay in business. And rumor has it that most folks with EVs have a lot of extra money to spend too. So there's that kind of economic drive for the local business. But I've got, mixed emotions about going forward with it as well. But it is in Mr. Mortensen's district, and I think you're okay with going forward with at least applying.
I had been with mixed feelings. I've done in the past. I'll sign this like this. In this case, the testimony has been enough that I say no.
All right. I don't think you're going to get a motion then. Let's move on.
Okay. Okay, Coroner. I'll remind everybody in about 10 minutes, we have a Board of Health, so we'll try and get through this. We may have to recess and then do the Board of Health and then come back. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dana Tucker, Cowlitz County Coroner. And
Dana, you may need to make sure that microphone is like right here.
Okay, Dana Tucker, Cowlitz County Coroner.
And I'm Chief Deputy Coroner Kimberly Carroll.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I understand that this is the follow-up of several workshops that the board has had with the county coroner in part to understand the need for personal service agreements with a pathologist. We learned that the entire state has a very limited supply of pathologists. Cowlitz County can't afford to hire one full-time. We have one that's on a longer-term contract and for so many autopsies a year. And they're just about at their limit, and he's not always available 100% of the time. So this allows some flexibility with getting the job done when there are deaths that occur that have suspicious or unknown reasons, and the investigations have to take place. The coroner's job isn't to do the autopsies. It's to do the investigation, to gather the information. We can't get the indication, the evidence oftentimes unless we have a medical expert that can get in, literally get in to find out what the cause of death is to the best of their ability. I know I missed that first meeting, so I just want to make sure I've got an understanding of where we've come from.
Yeah, it's basically a contract is the way I understand it, to pick up overflow that the coroner we're under contract with when vacations and whatnot, he's not available, that this coroner or this pathologist would pick up the overflow, and it runs through the end of this year.
Yes.
Through the end of this year. And then I think the one with our current pathologist ends this year too.
October of 24, I believe.
October 24. So this is a one that gets us through the end of this year, runs us through the budget cycle, and then we'll look at it again if needed. We do this, and to be real honest with you, we do this in other departments where we have a backup. So that's what we're looking at here. So I would open to
A question, I thank you for the 2022 numbers, but I'd like to know what the 2023 numbers, and the reason I'm asking that is because we have a sunk cost with the contract with Dr. Nelson, and if he's not available, I want to start to see whether we should do something about that contract. We pay him $7,500 a month. And I don't know if he's a problem to the coroner or not. And he can only he should be available. It's really all I'm trying to say. And if he's not, I think we have a problem.
So like the other commissioners had mentioned, this is not to go over Dr. Nelson. It is when Dr. Nelson is sick, when Dr. Nelson is on vacation, when Dr. Nelson is not available. He is usually always available to us. But when I don't have a pathologist available, I have 5 days to perform an autopsy, to find cause and manner for the families and the decedent. And that's what I'm here for. Every other place has multiple pathologists that they use. Washington State does not have very many traveling pathologists. Nationwide, we don't have very many traveling pathologists or pathologists. We're very limited on that. We have three traveling pathologists currently, and they're utilized through all 39 counties. So Dr. Quinn is not available. She's mainly tied up in Thurston County and Skagit County, so she's very hard to get. Dr. Kiesel is in the midst of retiring, so he's on a limited schedule. I can call any of them, which I have in the past. You go down the line when you need a pathologist. Most other places do not have a full-time pathologist. Only medical examiners have a full-time pathologist. Everybody else uses the traveling pathologist. And it's at a, first come, first served basis. Dr. Lacsina, Dr. Quinn, and Dr. Nelson are all at the same fee. I have no control over their fee. That doesn't have anything to do with me. They're all at the same fees. And so When I need a pathologist, I would call another pathologist and see who is available. The county's requiring a contract. In here, it says service agreement, which Dr. Lacsina is already on a service agreement, so he has a vendor number so he can get paid. I've only used Dr. Lacsina when I needed another pathologist, when Dr. Nelson was on vacation or not available. I don't call another pathologist when Dr. Nelson is available. When he's not, I have to have an autopsy done. I have to make sure that my job is completed, and that's when we have to utilize another pathologist. This is not the only county that does that. Every county, there's really not any other coroner county that has a full-time pathologist. We're lucky to have Dr. Nelson. Dr. Nelson is at 48 autopsies on a contract, which averages $18.50 per autopsy for 48 autopsies. Or it would average 4 autopsies a month. So when that's over, then he would be going to a fee for service. So his costs are not extreme. So I don't know where that's coming from. He's actually on the lower side of things. But we also, with having him, that is his fee. We also have other fees that are included in the other pathologist fees. So.
Yeah, we went through that yesterday in detail.
Yeah, well, they weren't here and weren't
No,
able
I
to
did-
understand it because you guys had me come in before they were. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background. So 2023's, I have the autopsy reimbursement here, just to give you guys a little background. When we have an autopsy, the state reimburses us 40% of every autopsy. So we're not paying the $90,000 for Dr. Kiesel or Dr. Nelson. We're paying 40% less of that. So the state reimburses each accredited office, which we're in the process of being reaccredited. So the state reimburses us 40% of the total cost of an autopsy. So the autopsy includes the pathologist, it includes histology, it includes toxicology, it includes x-rays if we need x-rays, although we have an x-ray machine in our office, so we don't have that cost to our office or our county. So just $18.50 for the pathologist, $146 for toxicology, histology, maybe $186.87. So if you're looking at that, and then the toxicology also depends on what test we have to do. Now, fentanyl and carfentanil, fentanyl is a standard test. If they test positive, which we do a urine test before, so we know what we need to test for. Carfentanil, we have to do an expanded test. So it costs a little bit more. So we have accurate results. So the total for the pathologist, histology, and toxicology, for instance, will be $23.78.87. So we do every 6 months, we have a autopsy reimbursement that we submit to the state. So I am up to date currently. This won't be the full numbers because we're not done until the end of this month. And then the next one is for the next 6 months, which starts July 1st. So currently, if you think about it, I do every autopsy that we do, I plug in all the numbers, and then it gives me a subtotal, and then it gives me the 40% total. And to mention, the state also reimburses 100% of any child death under the age of 3. So anything we do, which there are more testing that we have to do for that, is paid for 100%. So for the numbers, we have had 45 autopsies, all of them needed. 38 were from Dr. Nelson, 7 were from Dr. Lacsina. Those 7 from Dr. Lacsina were when Dr. Nelson was not here. Again, I have 5 business days to complete an autopsy. And so I have to have another pathologist. I would utilize any pathologist, but Dr. Lacsina has been willing to make sure that he's available when Dr. Nelson is not. So at least Cowlitz County is covered. We don't have that in the 39 counties. We have a lot of other counties that are struggling and they are taking way longer to get a pathologist to do an autopsy, even on homicides. So we're very lucky to have somebody that's willing to step up and be willing to cover the county to make sure that we get everything done that we need done. 13 of those are toxicology only. That means when they don't have any, well, the others are if there's no medical history and we have to do an autopsy because I have nothing to go off of. The other 13 are supposed probably drug-related ones, but they have a significant medical history to fall back on if their toxicology comes back and it is not high enough. Now, the others either don't have that or they don't have significant medical history. So if I denied an autopsy, that would not be very good on this county because, I mean, families could come back and sue for something like that. That's why we do autopsies on the national standards is what we look at for an autopsy. So grand total. right
Dana, can
now-
I step in just for a second because we're running out of time and you may be answering more than they even have questions on. We're just kind of looking if we want this supplemental contract. Do we want to continue with this or do we want to recess and do the Board of Health?
I would ask the Board of Health if they would mind if we,
It's I don't see the chair. I'd like,
I have just
I'd
2 more
like-
numbers to
yeah.
throw out here and that's it.
yeah, I'd like to get through this so you're not sitting here through the whole Board of Health thing if we can, but we're gonna start you a little late. Okay. He says, okay.
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 So our grand total right now is 78,716.87, which is actually probably lower than a lot of the other counties. We're seeing a lot of drug overdoses right now, and that's upping everybody's costs. So 40% of that is 31,486.75 is what the state will reimburse us. So really our cost right now is only at 47,230.12. So, and Dr. Nelson's contract is at 90,000. So really we're about half of that.
Okay.
so question, yesterday you said 49 autopsies in 2023 and you said 45 just now. Which one is it?
Well, I grabbed my autopsy reimbursement sheet here. So we have, let me count again. Sorry, we have, so there's the total, I believe, with the toxicology only, which doesn't have anything to do with the pathologist unless I need to review it with him. So there's 38 full autopsies and with Nelson, 7 with Dr. Lacsina, and then the 13 with toxicology. So 37,
So it's a
45.
49, then that's the right number. I can't add that fast when I'm trying to hear.
So 45 with 13 toxicology only.
Okay, by the way, the difference in cost between one pathologist and another, has never been a question on my mind. I know you can't control those costs, and as long as we have a competitive bid situation, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
And-
all the pathologists are the same cost for the three that we have
Right,
available.
right. So I'm not at all concerned over that. I am thinking 38 for Dr. Nelson, so the remainder of the year, we only have maybe
And
maybe 10 more to go. We're on pace now. Let's see, in 2022, we did 63 autopsies, and we're on pace now for doing maybe 90 or 100, who knows?
so if I can add to that real quick. So with those 63, I don't have all my notes and stats and everything that I brought here and presented yesterday. But out of those 63, I believe it was 40, it was under 48 that Cowlitz County did. The others were from other counties that brought their autopsies here, which then we bring in revenue on. So if you look at the years past, they don't ever go over 48 autopsies. There's a problem there because once they've hit the 48 autopsies, they don't have Dr. Nelson doing any other autopsies. So then the only thing I can think of is, and from being here before, they're guessing on cause and manner. And so that is not how our office is supposed to run. We are here for the community. We are here for the families, and we are here to find cause and manner for the decedents. I'm not going to guess. If I need an autopsy done, an autopsy is to be done. And we have an RCW that states that an autopsy needs to be done, the county shall pay for the autopsy. And it's RCW 6850-104 if you want to look that up.
Yeah, I've looked at the RCW, all of us have, and it's one of those things like the sheriff or the prosecuting attorney, there's discretion involved. And the only judgment point I have is what has changed between prior years and the current year, and how is that with respect to a standard that is throughout the state and throughout the nation. There, and I don't know what those are.
Yeah, well, like I had mentioned, the deaths are going up. So I can't control deaths, and I can't control if a death needs an autopsy or not. The state does give the coroner discretion on whether an autopsy needs to be performed or not. I think I'm pretty good at that. I'm not going to perform an autopsy that doesn't need to be performed, but I'm also not going to miss an autopsy that I don't have anything to fall back on. Drug overdoses are huge. We are currently, well, last time I looked, we were at 17 drug overdoses, and 17 out of 19 are fentanyl related. Fentanyl is a huge problem right now. Last year, we had 38 drug overdoses and 12 of those were fentanyl related. So if you can see where I'm going here, the majority of those people are younger people that are dying. They don't have medical history. So if they don't have medical history to fall back on, I can't just assume that it's going to be the drugs that are the issue and that's what they died from. Some of them I can, some of them I can't. And in the past, I've received pending autopsies or pending toxicology reports that came back that they never did an autopsy on, and they don't have any history, no medical history, and the drugs are not what killed them. So then that leaves me in a bad spot trying to tell the family I have no idea because they didn't do an autopsy. And I'm not going to guess what your loved one died from and tell you something that's not true.
One sort of simple question regarding, you say, you confuse me when you say you need a PSA for Dr. Lacsina, but you've been paying him or you've been enlisting his service and he already has a Venda number. So
Yes.
the process just has me confused. Maybe
So-
someone
So this is what I have been confused about, is because I worked in 2 other counties, and all the other counties that I know of only have to have a service agreement for another pathologist. That's all they do because they're a fee for service. I was told that the county needed a contract, which I didn't understand why I needed a contract when it's just a fee for service. And so with that, do I have to have a contract with every other pathologist that I need to use because one isn't available? No, I think I only need a service agreement in order to get a vendor number for them to be paid. They are not a full-time person. I should not have to have a contract. And that's what I have been saying this whole entire time. And I see on here, it's listed as personal service agreement, not contract. So honestly, I don't know why we're here.
Oh, there was. Well, we're pretty well pressed for time, so,
My comment's pretty quick. It sounds like we have Dr. Nelson on a contract. Is that on an annual basis? Then what about, there was what, 8 autopsies that were done that by someone outside of him? Does that seem like a lot to you guys? And is there something in place that says you can only be on vacation or unavailable so many times before you maybe have to give some of that back? Because if we're paying paying for something we're not getting, that doesn't seem fair to our county. You know, it seems like we're doubling up and nobody seems to be asking the question, what was it that caused him to not be available? I understand a person could take vacation and hopefully some of that was figured in when we made the contract originally. But right now I'd really question, you know, how open-ended is that and who's overseeing whether that seems right, because it's almost double pay.
Except at this point, that's somewhat of an academic question because there isn't a timeline involved on a monthly basis. It's an annual basis. So if
Right.
he has performed 38 autopsies, it's not unreasonable for the coroner to go out and try and get some additional help, realizing that there are only 10 more autopsies left for the whole year. So I don't think that's something.
Well, but so again, when you've made that annual contract and came up with the dollar amount, was again, there's something that said along there, that's for so many autopsies. And so this would be reasonable then that he's been so busy that he cannot do so many, or
I think you just look at the numbers. I would repeat what I just said.
well,
He's used up more than 3/4 of his allowance based on the 48, which is in the contract.
okay, okay, that helps me under. Okay.
Hey, I just have a real quick question. Right now, Mr. Dr. Nelson is getting 90,000 a year for his services, correct?
Yeah, so that equals like 1850 per autopsy
Okay.
for the 48 autopsies.
Okay, now, I just got through dealing with a medical examiner in Seattle. And now their services are identical. They do autopsies, I'm sure, and all the paperwork. If he were to go to a bigger city and become a medical examiner, what would his fee yearly income be then?
Probably a lot more. I don't know what it is. He was originally the medical examiner down in Multnomah County. And he did our autopsies for us I don't even remember when he started, but he would come up and be our main pathologist. So when he was done down there, he would come up here and do this. He's now retired down there and stated that he would still work for Cowlitz County. But then again, the contract all these years has only been for 48. So his 1850, as you can tell, the other ones are a little bit more. And so the medical examiner offices are appointed, so they are full-time in there. They make a lot more than that, but all the other counties are paying just fee for service. So we're lucky to have Dr. Lacsina at a contract for the 48 autopsies for that amount of money. And then after that, we would be fee for service like every other county that is not a medical examiner county. They're paying a lot more for autopsies.
So could he possibly be unhappy, the fact that his duties and his yearly income are not what the bigger cities are? And he could possibly making almost, well, not twice, of course, but quite a bit more, at least $40,000 more a year.
He could get a lot more money someplace else, but he
I-
retired and
I've got a
decided
sort of
to
a
stay with us.
partial answer to that. For a 2-year period, around 2018, Dr. Lacsina performed enough autopsies that he collected $546,000 for those 2 years on autopsies.
Is that for down in Multnomah County?
I beg your pardon?
Is that down in Multnomah County?
I didn't understand.
Is that down in Multnomah County where he was working?
Oh, I,
Because it wasn't here in Cowlitz.
no, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting here. That it was a general question. Can they
Yeah.
make more
Yeah.
money?
Yeah, at the bigger counties, bigger cities, and when you are an actual medical examiner, you make way more than just a regular pathologist.
Regarding Dr. Nelson, it appears that for 38 to date, he's done more than 7 or that about per month all along the way. So what precludes us from, that means that he's got the capacity to do that, and now he's only down to 10 for the rest of the year. Aren't we able to, like other professional agreements, to supplement that and say, okay, can you do more for the rest of the year? Is there, what limits that to the 48 total for the year?
So in the contract, and this is before me, in the contract, it says 48. He had mentioned to me that the past admin and him were talking about extending that, moving it up to like 50 something or 60 some autopsies, but then that would increase it. I mean, for the better of the county, for financial, that would be better to bump his numbers up and pay him, have him do a few more. Again, the only time that I had Dr. Lacsina here was when Dr. Nelson was gone.
I simply asked the question then, is there an opportunity or an option for you to present a supplement to his contract?
Yes,
for
I
doing
believe so.
Autopsies
Yes.
at a price where he'd make more than $90,000, but it would still be reasonable to the county.
That's an excellent question. Is there such an opportunity?
Yes, and I was, like I said, I was told by him that it was in the works to up his amount of autopsies. So I have not had a chance to look at that or present it because we were just on this at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion. So,
Yeah, and I don't remember what number he said that they were looking at moving it up to, maybe 60 or so autopsies.
well, I figured going twice what he's done.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I would think too, but also Dr. Nelson is retired and he didn't want to do,
Yeah.
X amount. He doesn't want to work full time because he's retired. He's just staying with us to help our county out.
I'm just saying, the rate he's already been doing. he can
Yes.
Keep that up and be a benefit to the county and you.
Well, you were here about 3 months ago,
Mhm.
originally in regards to this. If you need the help, I don't see why you can't get provided the help. I mean, Dr. Nelson's doing his job. It sounds like he gets his 48 a year. You should definitely be able to make an amendment to that if he's willing to do that.
Yes.
And it shouldn't even be about, these people are deceased. You got a 5-day timeframe, it shouldn't even be a question. Give her the help, give her the money, and call it a day.
Thank you.
Do an autopsy on everybody that dies, correct?
No,
How many people have died that you do autopsies on? What's the percentage roughly?
like I said, I didn't bring all my numbers. I'm so sorry. They're at the office, but I think we're at like 553. But currently, right here, we have done the 45 autopsies out of the 587 or something like that we're currently at right now.
So a little less or approximately 10%
Yeah.
of the deaths you actually do an autopsy on. If a family member is very distressed over the fact that you don't want to do an autopsy, could they pay the cost of having it done?
Yes, and so we go over that with families, but that's only when I have determined that they are not qualified for a forensic autopsy. So a forensic autopsy is when you die of outside of medical care, do not have any medical history, or it's something suspicious. So like the ones that I have for toxicology only here, they had a significant medical history. I didn't see anything else that was suspicious other than possible drug overdose. So that's why I did tox only. So that saves us from doing an autopsy. I'm not going to do an autopsy on somebody that has significant medical history that appears to be natural, but I am going to do an autopsy on somebody that doesn't have any medical history and I have nothing to fall back on of why they died.
Right. So I guess with the current situation with the fentanyl and the drug problem that's going on nationwide and the apparent pretty good increase that you're seeing in this county, somewhere along the way, it seems like there needs to be made some major adjustments made to either Dr. Nelson's contract and or supplemental service agreements to be able to accommodate what is obviously going to be, it's a nationwide problem. So it's not just limited to Cowlitz County,
Yes.
but somewhere there has to be some way to, I guess, to deal with it. Unfortunately, we got to be in here trying to adjust everything every time we turn around. If this keeps going up,
Yeah.
I guess it seems perfectly reasonable to discuss with Dr. Nelson the possibility of extending his service agreement or contract, whichever that is, and make adjustments there. And if not, then provide for additional service agreements with whatever traveling pathologists that you have available. So let's see, what was the other question I had? Do you have a feel for on the drug overdose problem on a statewide or nationwide basis that other counties are seeing? That do we fall above or below the line for what that average is?
So everybody is having the same issues. Some of the smaller counties, they're having the issues, but to us, they don't look too much. They might have maybe just a handful, but with their population, it's a lot for them. So for ours, of course, we are about the halfway mark of what we are, a little bit more of what, and this was a couple weeks ago when I said the 19. So I haven't updated it because I had all those other stats to pull last week. So all the other counties are having an issue. To make note, Thurston County is a larger population for us. They could be a medical examiner state, but it's still a coroner state. They do not have a pathologist on staff full time. They use Dr. Quinn at a fee for service. So every autopsy that they do is those numbers, not on a contract, not on anything. So their amount for autopsies is well over $5,000 at the moment, or $500,000 at the moment. And the commissioners, I guess he had said that he had gone to the commissioners and the amount that they stated for a full-time pathologist was not enough. So they're paying actually more for a fee for service than on a contract. So everywhere is having major issues. And he also told me that he had to state that it's the drug overdoses is what's pushing his budget up at the moment. And I think that is statewide.
Okay, I'm not sure if you, I understand everybody's having the problem, but are we above the line or below the line on the national average of?
I haven't checked the national average. I know we're probably on, we're above where we have been. So,
I can throw you a little bit of info on that, but it's really hard to get these numbers. They're clinical autopsies and then the medical legal autopsies. And the data is conflated in lots of places. Best as I can tell, the autopsy rates have gone down precipitously. And the typical today would be like 5%. We're at 10%. I don't know if that's significant or not. And just for curiosity, in Britain, we're under 1% for autopsies. That is probably driven clearly by the economics, and we're trying not to drive this by economics. I would never want the coroner not to do her job just because we are too chintzy. But we have to take into account that the world is such that the PA and the sheriff, for example, they can continue they could press. There's so many violations. They could drown the county. They could drown us all with stuff. So it's a judgment call. To do an autopsy on everyone is clearly an overkill. Not to do any is clearly not appropriate. And I'm just trying to understand where that number is. And that's the essence of my question here, is trying to determine that. And so the questions about reimbursement from the state is, to me, an irrelevant issue. It's still taxpayer dollars. But that's not my question. I'm not asking about that.
Yeah, I'm not worried so much about the dollars as the increased number that's going up, and where the hell is it going to end? I don't think anybody's got an answer to that. But yeah, obviously we got a problem if we were already well past or nearing 75% of the contracted number of 48.
Yep.
And haven't finished the first 6 months of the year.
It's, there's another sad thing in the system. Any work the coroner does to uncover stuff, like I'm really interested. There was a pathologist in Finland that talked about strange structures in people that had died suddenly and vaccinated, and none of that information can come from the coroner's office. And that's a shame, because we're spending the money to do the autopsy. That ought to go to the medical schools, to OHSU, to just be useful for society. But we're precluded from doing that.
I'm good, thank you.
One quick question. You talked about shortage of pathologists, and you also talked about a 5-day deadline.
Mhm.
What happens if you come up to the 5-day deadline and you have no pathologist?
So a lot of them are having that issue right now. Legally, it states in the RCWs, we have 5 days. We have 5 days to complete a death certificate, submit it to either say pending or a cause of death. We usually talk with the families and let them know that, the shortage of pathologists. The families can come after us actually for not performing it, because it's legally bound at 5 days. But with the shortage of pathologists, some of our hands are tied. But if, say, Dr. Nelson is out, I can't justify going to a family and saying, well, I can't really get a pathologist to do an autopsy within 5 days because I can.
Okay, so then what
There's
do
a
you
di-
do?
That's where one of the traveling pathologists come in and would cover the time lapse or when the normal pathologist is out. So some of the other counties, like the rural counties, some of the really small counties, they have a lot harder time to do that because a lot of them will have to transport their decedents to, say, a bigger county or something like that, or see if one of the traveling pathologists is available. So,
Okay, so if you don't make it and then you have to run around in circles trying to get it covered after the 5 days, is there a fine levied against you for not doing that?
no, there isn't, but the families can, if they want to, they could come after us and try and push that.
Okay, how many times has that happened this year?
None.
None so far.
No, because I've had it covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could, I have one more administrative question. By the RCW, if the county in which the autopsy is done has to bear the cost. So you've been doing, we've been doing autopsies for other counties. Do we bear the cost then and we
No.
bill the counties back?
So, well, in the past, what I was told and what I saw was for 2 counties, yes, and then they are supposed to be billed and we are reimbursed. One of the counties he bills directly. So I would actually propose to get that changed to where the pathologist, any pathologist that does an autopsy within our facility for another county, they need to bill the other county directly. And then I would bill that county for the use of our facility. I do not think our county should pay that cost and then get reimbursed. That's my
Okay, I
opinion.
look forward to that change.
Yes. I never understood why it was that way to begin with, so.
Yeah.
With my simple mind, let me summarize this situation. We've had 48 autopsies done or 45 done already this year using Dr. Nelson for 38, Lacsina for 7 of those. Some way or another, you've already been able to pay Lacsina for doing that. You've done that with about $78,000. We're sitting here talking about $78,000 worth of services for the first 5 or 6 months. I don't see any issue. I think you need to just approve it and move on and see if she can engage Dr. Nelson and provide the service.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
One more. If there's multiple traveling pathologists, do we have to have a personal service agreement with each one? Or why couldn't it be just an open-ended services agreement that she's got with plug in the name as necessary at these rates? Either they'll do it or they won't. If they've got the same going rates, why wouldn't she just have the flexibility to use it?
Yeah. I don't know if I have the perfect answer to that, but I think I have heard over several meetings. I think when this contract with Dr. Nelson comes, we're probably going to see something totally different. I would expect it'd be more along those lines. I don't know. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, well, so with Dr. Nelson, he actually has a contract with this because we're the only ones that utilizes him. Well, other than the other couple others that bring theirs to us. But he's contracted for a certain amount. The other one should just be a personal service agreement like all the other counties where they get a vendor number to pay and we utilize them as we need. So from the other counties that I was in, they all had they provided their W-2s or whatever, and then their signed personal agreement paperwork. And then we just had that on file just to have it over at the auditor's office to give them a vendor number to be paid. They're as is, as needed. So they were never on an actual contract per se, like Dr. Nelson is.
I understand that. That's why I'm asking. This
yeah.
one specifies Dr. Lacsina.
Yes.
And I understood that there's 3 traveling pathologists. Is that the number?
Yes. And so the only reason I'm here is because I was told that per county policy, I have to have a contract, and all the other ones are a personal service
And that's what I'm
agreement.
asking.
Yes.
Do you have to do this with the other traveling pathologists? I mean, are you gonna have to repeat this every time that there's a problem? Like if Dr. Lacsina is not available and Dr.
Yeah.
Nelson hits
I,
his.
I don't know, Steve. I think what you have is the difference. I wasn't around when they did the initial contract, but I would assume that was a coroner driven thing and that was his preference. And I fully expect, our new coroner will have a different preference, so we might see something different. And that's,
Yeah.
I'd welcome that conversation. I don't know the history enough to tell you why it was
But
done.
I think the Dr. Nelson problem is going to work itself out real easy. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's this issue that we're addressing now is this personal service agreement thing that seems to be binding on one person, that now she can't use the other 2 people unless all of a sudden we got to get a new personal service agreement signed with their name on it.
So can I ask a question? So the personal agreements, personal service agreement form, if I'm understanding right, and from other areas that I'm familiar with, I can sign that myself. A contract has to go to the board. That was my confusion about this is why if he's not full-time and he's not guaranteed a certain amount, why do I need a contract? Why can't I just have a personal service agreement that I can sign myself, get him a vendor number and move on and not go through this?
So why are we going through this?
Well, Steve, one of the things that, at least the time that I've been here, every time we have lawyers involved, that we have to hire lawyers for specialty purposes.
Naturally.
The personal service agreement gets us our stamp of approval before the prosecutor officially hires that, folks. We do something very similar with public defenders who have conflicts. You know, they're representing somebody that they might have had an involvement one way or the other. And so we have to hire outdoor counsel. But it's kind of ministerial. I mean, it's just like, yes, it's just the stamp of approval. They've got this agreement. And I think that's where we're headed. It's just making sure it's just part of the routine. To be honest, there has been a benefit for the questions and answers, just for general information of what goes on. We've never had this kind of in-depth explanation of what goes on from our previous coroner. He, you know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And I'm
I-
happy to be here to.
So
explain
as,
this.
even though you're under the spotlight, so to speak, I mean, I appreciate the patience with which you've answered the questions and help make things
Yeah.
a little bit more clear. Anything we can do to help streamline that process. I mean, I think we're all willing to make it move. a lot
Thank
more.
you.
Yeah, I don't have any trouble streamlining that. You know, our role is really just kind of look at the overall budget, and my role isn't to tell an elected what to do. My role is to make sure the county stays solvent and in budget. And I think whichever way you go, then you work that into the budget. And that's where my role would be, to hold you accountable to that. This other stuff, how you do your job, is not so much in my.
So when we deal with dollar issues, you're absolutely right. We've got that responsibility. But I think there's an underlying subtext that we need to be aware of, and that is more and more people are dying from drug overdoses. That's more expensive for us to process. That's true. But that there's an underlying public health issue that I just think it's ironic. We've delayed the Board of Health meeting to have this discussion that deals with probably a pretty serious public health issue that hopefully the Board of Health will talk about. I don't, but we'll find out. But,
There is something, we, the board, are responsible for the budget. And I know that the budget you inherited was not proper, and stuff will have to be accounted for there, but in the big picture, what if every elected can go ahead and spend whatever they want someplace and there is no accounting for it, it's very difficult for us to pretend that we are being responsible in our job. We recently, in fact, yesterday, we got a proposal from the budget manager for tightening up some controls, making it a lot easier. When I first came on board, make it a lot easier for accountability. When I first came on board, the budget process just appalled me. I didn't say much because you got to figure out what's going on. But we do need to figure out where that line is, where the electeds have the latitude to perform their job, and we have the latitude for justifying the budget and our questions to the public who's picking up the tab. And that's the big discussion here. Whether, I mean, this PSA question, I think, as the coroner has pointed out, is almost a moot question. She's already gone ahead and done the issue, done the autopsies. So the question is, what does this PSA do? And that's where this discussion has become fairly useful. There is also the other one, if we talk to Superior Court, they would like another judge, making it 6 judges. There's just no end of stuff. And we are standing as sort of a defense against every agency going off and saying, I need the world. Where do we draw that line? That's why we need your help. That's why I'm glad there are 3 of us, not just one of us. No one made us a god.
Well, I guess as was earlier stated, I'm not trying to hold somebody's feet to fire for her to be able to do her job on a dollar amount. Ethically, it sounds like if we're having that much increase in drug overdoses and she's got that more responsibility to do the evaluations or the autopsies, I guess what I'm asking is, let's say by the end of next month, Dr. Nelson hits his limit. He can't do anymore under his existing contract. So now you've got to do the deal with modifying his contract for number 1. But for number 2, in the meantime, I'm asking the question on this PSA that we're talking about right now. It names 1 person. So if that person is not available, Dr. Nelson's not available because you're in the middle of trying to figure out a contract change for him, and now this guy's not available, is she going to be back in here having to get personal service agreements for 2 other traveling pathologists? Is that what we're doing? Because she doesn't, this names 1 person.
Yeah, the short answer to that is we hope that we're not knee-jerk every day and, I need another PSA today, that we're looking forward, we're planning. And in some sense, that's what the coroner is doing here now, is saying, I got a problem. So I don't, yes, I would, at least until we change county policy, we would like for the coroner or any other department or any other elected department to honor the requirement of having a PSA that the board approves.
And,
Okay.
and the solution, and I'm not picking on Dana, but it came from her. So I'm assuming that this solves the problem she foresees for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Yeah.
We do have the other pathologists and I would utilize them. So if I have to have a personal service agreement for each one, just like Larry over here, I have them sign it and it can just go through instead of having to have a whole sit down, go over everything, waste everybody's time.
I think we approve a dozen lawyers
Okay.
for OPD.
Individually.
Yeah, well, all at once. One motion once a year, we say, these are folks we
Right.
can pick from. Yeah,
So then
we should be
I
able to
could,
figure something
I
like
can
that.
do a personal service agreement and sign it myself, and that should be good, right?
No.
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 Just submit it to you guys and you can sign it on a general form and not have to sit here and go through all
I,
this.
I
Okay,
think that's what the policy.
This,
is.
this would be
that would
the,
be good for me.
this would be the personal service agreement. Under that, I use.
So
A,
I
B,
I
C.
can just add all the other pathologist names and we're good to go. Is that,
I'd have to look at the policy.
So,
I-
sounds to
I-
me like you better submit a personal service agreement for each one of the.
Probably for
Okay.
each one.
You
but
might-
if I did this and just have the other ones do it, I can submit it on like a general form. You guys can just pass it without having to go through.
I would consult with the auditor. I don't know the specific answer. Reasonability doesn't always take first step, as you know, so.
Okay, yeah, because everybody else would be the exact same thing as we're dealing with right here and cost wise too. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Got a hand up. I lose under this, I lose my list of people, so I don't even know who's
Yeah,
there.
and
We had a hand up in, from the
yeah, and
audience.
one,
I'm sorry.
one comment too.
Is it?
Keenan Harvey.
It's important for communication to continue, so I realize it takes some time out of your day, but benefits us all, I think.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, I guess. Keenan.
Commissioner Dahl, I do have a quick question. This question's for Dana. I remember a topic of discussion during the election was transporting decedents to other counties, and it looks like other counties are utilizing Cowlitz County space to transport decedents here. Has that been a practice in the past where decedents from Cowlitz County were transported to another area when Dr. Nelson's contract was up? And the second part to the question is that a function that's currently still being utilized?
So I was informed by the Thurston County Coroner that yes, Cowlitz County had transported them up to Thurston County for autopsies to utilize Dr. Quinn and Dr. Kiesel up there when Dr. Nelson was not available. He could not get anybody else to come down here. So they had to transport them up there. Number wise, I don't know. I had been given a figure a while ago, but that was not on paper. It was not anything. No, I am not and will not be planning anytime soon or near future or anything like that to transport any of our decedents out of the county. We don't need to. We have Dr. Nelson. Dr. Lacsina has been willing to come down here when we need. And if I need to get another pathologist, they would be willing to come down here too. The other two are just more limited, but we have a facility and I have good standings with all the other pathologists and they're willing to come down here. So I'm not planning on taking anybody or needing to take anybody out of our county.
And so my question for the commissioners is, was there a personal service agreement for those cases? Did the prior coroner get a personal service agreement for any decedents that were transported outside of Cowlitz County?
And I can probably answer that. I have looked and I have not found any, and I've asked and I have not been able to get an answer for that. I did find an email from the old chief, Brett Dundas, that had sent Dr. Kiesel just a service agreement, which was, I believe, just something that was signed by the old coroner and not having to go through the board.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to address the underlying fear that you guys seem to have with a request that you made with a not having a service contract, but what did you call it? A
Personal service agreement?
personal service agreement. If you wrote up what is a personal service agreement for her, so that your fear of having her take this agreement and using it to have millions of dollars of worth of autopsies performed, that's very easy to take care of. You put a stipend at the very bottom of this agreement, not to exceed a certain amount per year. So that, yes, she has the discretion to use it for the end of the year. And then if, you know, she doesn't have to use all of it, but she's not going to be running away and using all kinds of money that perhaps you don't want her to use. So that part of it, she's not going to overuse what you might fear that she might. Just a thought.
But the only issue with that is it's really hard to determine how many autopsies, and hopefully for me coming in this year, I can't go off of practices from the past. That's why I'm here. I won't go off of practices from the past. That's why I'm here. Hopefully by the end of this year, we can have a better idea of how many autopsies that we can budget for next year. I might, you know, have the, say, 50 and 50, so maybe a total of 100 autopsies by the end of the year. Okay, well, that's something I can go off of instead of 48, right? So if we can budget for that, and we still have to be open-minded because things fluctuate. So when we have a better idea of how many we need, then if we're open-minded to say, okay, well, we might have 20 more, or we might have 20 less next year. We have to be open-minded and be able to fluctuate that. Because again, you know, the RCW states that we have to pay for an autopsy. And I am not going to spend money that I don't think is needed, especially when it comes to an autopsy, because that is my job. That is the role of the coroner, and that is for your benefit and your loved ones' benefits. And if I cut corners, then I'm not doing my job.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands. Pleasure of the board.
I think it's a moot point. I just saw an email from Doug Jensen. He's going to address some issues here at some point. Our office will be responding to this morning's discussion on budgeting and contracting with a legal response. I suggest that I would say, I don't think there's any harm if we don't do anything on this here today. Do you agree with that?
If you don't make a motion on it,
Right.
I guess we still have a few more autopsies left before I am.
Yeah, but you're gonna do those autopsies regardless, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have a recommendation, Mr. Chairman? If you'd like a motion,
But is there a reason to postpone it is my question.
when I feel uncertain that I don't understand all the ramifications, I tend to say, let me step back and think about it more.
Well,
Maybe the best thing to do is to
this
approve
runs through
pending
the end of the year.
referral to the prosecuting attorney for form, make sure it's the right format. That's what he's going to talk to us about.
I don't know. There's some bigger pictures involved here, obviously.
Well, this was provided from the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
They're the ones that did it. I only added the sub ones of the costs. They're the ones that provided it to me.
I think we should approve it then.
It runs through the end of the year, giving us a chance to look at other alternatives. I don't want to keep hashing this out because we don't agree with something. I think we can fix it over the next 6 months if there's something broken. So, I mean,
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion, move to approve the personal services agreement as has been discussed extensively.
Okay. See nobody approach. I don't see any other hands. I would call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thanks for your time, Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call for a motion to recess this and then we'll start Board of Health at 11.
Could I make a motion to have the chairman bring in lunch?
You could, I don't know if it'll go anywhere.
For everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I think I can get one more vote, couldn't I?
One quick
We do
citizen's
need a
comment
I don't.
is that.
Well, I really need to get to this
Just-
Board of
no,
Health.
You've just taken an elected official and went through all of this, and she's provided a tremendous amount of information. I hope you will apply the same scrutiny to our other elected officials, the coroner or the sheriff's office, the prosecuting attorney's office, in the same vein.
Just a quick comment. This is in 6 months, we had seen the coroner twice. This is the third time. We see those other people more frequently. So it's just a gap in communication.
Okay.
But yes, we view them the same way.
How about a motion to suspend or whatever this meeting till get through the
Do you
Board of
wanna
Health, and then we'll
yeah.
resume at the end of the Board of Health meeting.
So move.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll get Board